Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webcast, What's New in JD Edwards EnterpriseOne 9.2.2.6 release. My name is Brooke Bacon, Marketing Coordinator with GSI, and I'm very pleased to welcome our main presenter, Bill Rem. Bill Rem has been with GSI for 7 years, and he is our database team manager. He has been a JDE CNC since 1998. He is certified on Oracle and SQL Server databases. With his database expertise, he presents webcasts every single month, as well as writing GSI Insider articles, and is a phenomenal speaker presenting database topics at conferences all around. Fun fact, he is also a former test pilot and flight test engineer. So we're very excited to have him today. And now before we get started, I wanted to give you a chance to review our safe harbor statement. And now for a quick overview of today's meeting, which will last about 60 minutes. First, we would like to take a moment to go over a couple of housekeeping items, as well as provide a brief company overview. And then we will wrap it up with a 10-minute question and answer session. Now, if you'd like to submit a question, you can do so through the questions panel at the bottom of the GoToWebinar console window, located on the right side of your screen. Please note that questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. So if you would like to minimize your GoToWebinar console during the presentation, just click the right-facing arrow key on the top left of the console. Clicking the left arrow key will return the console so that you can input your questions. And now I would like to give you a brief overview of GSI. We are a full-service JD Edwards consulting organization, and we are an Oracle Platinum partner that was founded in 2004 and now has over 100 employees. We have offices nationwide and are recognized on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies in the U.S. We specialize in project consulting, managed services, cloud and hosting services, with all of our services backed with a 100% guarantee. We also provide a broad spectrum of business, functional, and technical consulting services for Oracle NetSuite, Oracle Cloud, Salesforce, ServiceNow, and other enterprise applications. In addition, we are a product development company that has many popular products, including Genius, which is our advanced monitoring and performance analytics solution for JD Edwards or any business critical system on any platform. Genesis, which is our load and stress testing application for system design, validation, or expansion for JD Edwards or any web-based business critical system. G Shield, which is our comprehensive security solution for JD Edwards, including password reset and two-factor authentication. Rapid Reconciler, which allows you to effectively manage your inventory in transit and R&V reconciliation processes for any E1 or world. Rapid Approval is our Salesforce App Exchange solution that streamlines the approval process request. All right, and now I would like to turn things over to Bill for our main presentation.
All right, thank you. I'm going to change presenter.
You got it? Okay.
And then I'm going to show a screen here.
Awesome. I can see you.
Okay, great.
Awesome, thanks.
Yep, that's me. A little blurry. Took that picture with a potato. Sorry about that.
You're good. It looks great.
All righty. So we're going to talk today about let me get my slide to advance here. There we go. 9.2.2.6, actually 9.2.2 just in general, and then we're going to go through every iteration of it. And here we go. So what's new in 9.2.2? I don't know how many of you here are on 9.2 anything right now, but it was released in last November 2017, almost a year ago now, and it includes a lot of new stuff, including UX1. It's got new search. We've got the trial edition on the public cloud, some enhancements to the mobile apps, sales order management guides, health and safety updates, and we'll talk more of the details here as we go through the slides. There's also new user-defined objects, personal forms. They allow a user to customize how their forms are displayed. They can make changes without any FDA, form design aid. We still have the same user interface side panel format where users can search and access attachments from the grid. They can attach files to records by just dragging and dropping. There's UX1 pages that alert you to conditions that you need to be aware of, enable you to analyze data to determine appropriate actions, and then provide a direct path to the application and form that you need to use to take those actions. You can also, the UX1 content deploy and configuration, you can work with development samples, work in a local development environment to test the content, and learn about customizing the content using Oracle Jet. And there's now also the external form. That type can be used to connect to external applications like ADF, Jet pages, the Compose EnterpriseOne pages, ADF applications. The external forms can be used instead of using a proxy application. And they can be used as embedded form content in the Cafe One layout. There's also a Springboard pane, which has a collection of tasks available for a role. The tasks can be launched from the Springboard pane. They can be EnterpriseOne applications, batch programs, ADF, and OneView reports. Menu indexing, it identifies a task that can be displayed and accessed by a role from the Springboard pane of the Cafe One page. The pop-up interconnect, that is similar to a modal interconnection in that it enables the user to only work in one form at a time. However, the child form appears in a pop-up window so that the parent form is still visible behind it, providing some context. We've also got the hover form property, which enables a power browse form to function as a hover form. This is an improvement over the previous method of creating hover forms from message forms, and includes 4 new system functions, which are described in the system functions in form design aid in that appendix. And then the universal cache browser, that utility enables you to view the cache details of any transaction before they're committed to tables, which is pretty awesome. Some more things we've got. The process for building packages has changed. How to support how objects are stored in the database. Let's see. Or you've got new orchestration components in 9.2.2, which get better. And when I talk specifically about the .1, .2, .4 releases, I'll give you some more detail on there. Sorry, bad scroll. You can adjust the maximum amount of records that are returned. You also have a better integration with the Oracle Mobile Cloud Service. So let's go on here to the EnterpriseOne search. Now that can be used on the iPad or an Android. You can use it on a tablet through the iPad container or through the browsers on Android and iOS. Hang on just 1 second. Somebody just walked in my front door. Okay, sorry about that. That was a little alarming there for a second. Everything's taken care of. So the EnterpriseOne Orchestrator, that is, it's been enhanced. It uses the Groovy scripting language. I don't know if anybody has used Groovy scripting language, but that's used around a lot of places, including some web-based monitoring and things like that. But so it's a custom service in an orchestration step, and you can use it to manipulate the output of an orchestration. It's also been enhanced to enable outbound REST calls to external systems, and it keeps it simple. I guess there's some simplicity that people need, but with the Groovy scripting and the REST calls, you get a lot of ability to create really complex orchestrations. I know I use Groovy scripting to call a database database metrics and alerts and things like that. So it's pretty powerful. Now the last thing is that the licensing, which is for Orchestrator, which used to be called Internet of Things Orchestrator, that's changed. Rather than being licensed as a separate product, it's now included as part of JD Edwards EnterpriseOne. Lots of new things. We got another whole slide of new things. So UX1 has been enhanced. It's so that end users don't have to wait for charts to refresh each time they're displayed. You can use batch shipment confirmation to confirm transportation loads. An expense entry, that's been enhanced by displaying expense category and location descriptions. Service management has new form layouts. Capital asset management has simplified form layouts. There's improvements to project costing. Job master revisions has been enhanced to include the owner address in the grid. Contract master has been enhanced in the contract and service billing. There's updated business process models in 9.2, as well as localization updates. And there's the Oracle Content and Experience Cloud. It lets you access contextual documents in the cloud, and then you can also put user documents in the cloud, which are documents that are not related to EnterpriseOne transactions. Now in UX1, there's 32 new UX roles, and using these roles, users can spend a lot less time searching through rows and rows of data and more time analyzing the information and managing the exceptions. So UX1 includes both a set of role-based application content as well as the tools that you can use to create and configure and personalize a user's interaction with JDE. Role-based application content uses landing pages, watch lists, analytics, Cafe One layouts, list view, grid formats, springboards, and many other things, modern UI controls basically that let you visualize the data in graphical formats like maps, Gantt charts, hierarchies. I also have watch lists that let the managers decide how to define information for their alerts. Data visualizations that a manager can use to analyze the data and the charts that are more intuitive and characteristic in nature. The springboards, they, as I had mentioned before, they let you really quickly launch tasks from where you're at instead of having to go through a lot of exits. And then there's the personal forms feature, which I mentioned before. It lets the users personalize the forms, based on their own experience rather than waiting for it to go through a development cycle. But enough of that citizen developer stuff, turning all of our users into developers. I don't know if that's a good thing, but I think it is. I like it. So let's talk about what's specific to each dot level release. In 9.2.2.1, they changed the package build process to support the objects being stored in the database. And as some of you know, we now are putting central objects completely in the database and rather than on the file system on the enterprise server. The SSL TLS security support is now available for BSSV and AIS. Media objects can go to the database if you like, and we'll be talking a little bit about that in another slide. The file storage, for the CNCs, the file storage for print queue things are going to be on the data, can be on the database. And with the media objects, to circle back to that a little bit, you can, when you decide how you want to do that, if you want to stick with a file system on 9.2, you can. You can also move them to the database, or you can put them in both locations. It really depends on your individual business need. There's a few more platform certifications that are now in 9.2, and some enhancements for code currency, including the new change assistant version. I think it's 4.004. Not exactly sure on that, but it is a brand new change assistant. So on the tech side, we've got single sign-on with the Oracle content, the Experience Cloud that it connects to now. You can get your notifications with Orchestration Studio, which there's a slide about that a little bit later. Subscription Manager is part of that. They use that to subscribe to notifications and get updates via email or SMS or pop-up browser. There's watch list service requests. There's a database connector for orchestrations, and this is all using that Groovy scripting, which I talked about. You can process data sets. You have authorization, OAuth 2.0 for the REST connections, the Java API. There's business function tracking. Now in object usage tracking, you can track business functions. And also the, I mentioned before, the Oracle Mobile App Framework 2.4. And then in addition, Server Manager now can send emails externally, and you can search on tasks. So these some of the specific things we talked about in the overall were either updated or introduced in 9.2.2.1. Now 9.2.2.2, you can cut and paste tiles and copy. It says cope. I don't know if we need to cope with them, but I cope with JDE a lot. But I think that's supposed to say copy. You can now get troubleshooting information in the search feature, and now you have to have a security server for AIS. Before this, you didn't have to have it, but now you do. Now there wasn't a 9.2.2.3 release, so we're gonna skip right over that. We're gonna go right to 9.2.2.4. So there's a new object, user-defined object, which is the form extension that lets you view columns, add business view columns to the forms. The personalization functionality now lets users hide and rename and hide, unhide, rename menu exits, because some of those don't really apply to everybody. The grids are even better in 9.2.2.4. You can rename the column headers and in the list view and the table format. To go further in subscriptions, actually subscriptions got a little bit better in 9.2.2.4. Or actually they got introduced in 9.2.2.4 where you can assign people to, you can subscribe a group of people to notifications. And the scheduled job properties for these notifications and the orchestrations are all in the database. More on the tech side, the performance improvements got a lot better with how they changed it and with the database. We've got Orchestrator 6.1.0. There's a process recorder. It's really cool. It lets you go through your whole process. It records each step of the process, and then the BA can save all of that as a form request, which then gets turned into an orchestration. So it's a little bit more point and click and less developer. And now you can FTP as well and launch reports. So that's 9.2.2.4. 9.2.2.5, actually kind of boring. It's just a bug fix release. 81 SARs. That is an actual screenshot of a bug, and but behind it is an actual screenshot of the SARs that were included in 9.2.2.5. And 9.2.2.6 actually was also a bug fix release. Got rid of 65 SARs and also took care of Ant-Man apparently. But let's talk about notifications. So these subscriptions that are new in 9.2.2.4 and later, they enables you to well, it says there, improve your business efficiency, but how? So you use these proactive notifications that are actionable. So these notifications enable the system to notify users of business events as they happen without needing to be online. So these subscriptions, they're really convenient, they're timely, they're easy to set up. You can subscribe to notifications and receive updates by email, SMS, text message, or as a browser pop-up, or even in JD Edwards through the Work Center on the EnterpriseOne menu bar. When you subscribe to the notifications, you know when these key transactions or events occur without having to log in to EnterpriseOne. This close monitoring helps you respond quickly and do your job a little more efficiently, so you don't have to continuously click through and find your alerts and see what's coming up. Now you can add or delete or modify your subscriptions at any time. You can use the subscription manager to create and manage those. With 9.2.2.4 and beyond, you can view and sometimes even modify or even opt out of subscriptions that have been assigned to you. Now this all does require Orchestrator, which I'll talk about in the next slide. In 9.2.2.4, as I mentioned previously, the notifications tables are moved from system to the control tables data source. There's a whole lot of prerequisites to install this. I'm going to go over it briefly, but there is a guide called JD Edwards EnterpriseOne Tools Notifications that you need to look up to see what is involved in there. There are several new tables, F98, 0051, 52, 53, and there's several new OCM mappings that need to be put in. So here's the prerequisites for the notifications. Obviously, you need Orchestrator. You have to be running 9.2.2 and all the required ESUs, and you'll see that on My Oracle Support. You have to deploy it to, you deploy the Orchestrator to AIS. You can use an existing one or build a new one through Server Manager. And then once you have that, then you have to turn on the notifications feature, which is it's in the documentation. I'm not going into too much detail about it, but you also have to set up UDO security for the notifications. And then once you start setting up email delivery, you have to, whether it's external or if you go through the Work Center, you need to set up the mail preferences, obviously. There's a lot of details surrounding how to, to do the email. There's a little bit of information on here about this, but then once you get all of these notifications, all the prerequisites done, then you can start setting up and configure your notifications. It mentions in there about if you're gonna let people specify an email address, you have to make sure that the allowed delivery method has email in it. Otherwise, they won't get it. Let's go on also to a relatively new feature, object tracking, object usage and tracking. This is really great. It captures object usage by user, role, environment, path code each time an object is launched by the user or the system. So it tracks applications, UBEs, business functions, and this gives you a lot more information when you're trying to upgrade or apply an update to the system. Now you can see what needs to be focused on. There are several applications related to this. The P980042T is the configuration. There's some new tables that you're going to have to use there. And if you want to learn more about this, you just find the EnterpriseOne Tools Software Updates Guide. There's a section called Using Object Usage Tracking, and you'll get more information there. And I mentioned previously that in 9.2.2, the spec objects are going into the database. Don't have a choice about that. Print queue files can go into the database. Now you can store print queue files in the database exclusively, or on the file system exclusively, or in both locations simultaneously. Some customers, some clients don't want to put them in the database because they're using a third-party reporting tool that needs to pull it off of the file system. And if it's just one or two files that you're getting, perhaps you can set up a separate export for that. But once you put it into the database, your third-party tool would have to be able to read it from the database. Media objects also, putting those into the database, you have that option. Instead, you can use a file server, or it can be put into the database. It's a lot easier to have your media objects separated by environment once you put them in the database. Now, of course, putting all this stuff in the database can be a big or a small event for you, because if you have many gigabytes of media objects or PDFs or whatever, you're going to have to provision that space on your database storage to cover that. But the cool thing is that if it's all on the database, then your database backups now take care of all of that, and you don't have to have separate file system backups, multiple backups to capture all of this production data. Once it's all contained on the database, then you have one point that takes care of it, manages it, and backs it up for you. I think it's a good overall change. I recommend everybody do it unless you have a really specific business case that requires you to have physical files on your system. Let's talk for a second about spec objects in the database. So these are things with business functions, business views, UBEs, tables, and so There's one time it moves everything into the database. You don't need anything in the file system. JDE will look in the database whenever a file-based object is used. And as I mentioned before, this simplifies things technically and reduces the risk because you're now relying on database backup and recovery. It makes it a lot easier to copy or duplicate a path code. And once if you decide one day to migrate to the cloud, it's a lot simpler to just grab a database backup and restore it than it is to move a whole bunch of data up. And it also includes a new history archive for object auditing. So it captures, like I said before, it captures info each time an object is changed. You can find objects as they cross the path codes. You can export objects as PAR files. So it makes working with objects a lot easier. And the media objects in the database, so it's all referenced in the database. There's a UBE that will move everything to the database for you. So if you decide not to move your media objects to the database at first, you can always do it again later. Print queue objects. This is we now, obviously I said our preferred choice is for you to put everything in the database. It makes batch queries a lot more efficient, and whenever you have a huge amount of jobs, it makes those a lot faster because all of your work is now being done on the database instead of in multiple locations. But like I said, there are business cases where you need to have something needs to be scraped. So that would be a case-by-case basis, I would say, to look at that. A lot of the benefits. This is related to the benefits of moving to the cloud. This is not any other benefit, but you can move once you have everything in the database. You can move to the cloud super easy. Remote package builds are a lot easier. The amount of time to deploy changes and upgrades and fixes is much shorter. You can have multiple versions of the same objects in the database stuff. This it's really part of making JD Edwards more cloud ready, I guess I would say. When you have things spread all over the place, if you need multiple servers in a cloud situation, that gets really, really expensive. It's a lot cheaper to buy extra storage and extra memory than it is to buy multiple servers to do different things that can be put in a single server. And just the complexity level of having files and database managed separately is another thing. If you have like a hybrid cloud setup where you are leveraging the cloud for maybe disaster recovery or backups, makes it a lot easier to move those files up. That's how some cloud services are. Their initial seed is by a database backup, and it just makes it a couple less steps to do. Now, this also builds on the future of JD Edwards, which everybody's going to the cloud. Cloud is a big deal. Cloud is awesome, but the definition of a cloud. The cloud, right? The cloud is just somebody else's computer that you don't own. And that's where everybody wants you to go, to the cloud. And so this is all to make it easier to do that. But for those of you who decide not to go to the cloud, it's still going to be easier for you too. And the final benefit too is that you have a lot better security because managing files in multiple places has one level of complexity, but then you have to manage the security for those files, and it's especially kind of extra difficult with like if you do a vanilla install of JD Edwards where the media objects and the print queue is all on, all mixed in with the logic or the deployment server stuff, then you have to have different levels of security that have to be managed, and it gets a little complex. But putting it all in the database, then all of that stuff now works for the JD Edwards security, and you don't have to have a lot of different kinds of processes to make sure things are secure. Before we finish up here, we've got a couple last pages of notes. In a couple things that didn't fit really anywhere is now the latest NER generator, it conforms to the C99 standard, if that's important to anybody. It makes it a little bit more solid and stable and easier for, if you're going to be hitting the code directly. In general, on the package builds, we're seeing about 8 to 12 hours for the server and 4 hours for the client. The first build takes a long time, especially because you're moving things to the database. So your very first build, where it moves all of your objects to the database, is going to take a lot longer. So then all of this 9.2 stuff requires not only the planner ESU, but also a roll-up ESU and obviously an ASI. Some of the ESUs that we've seen, when we apply these things, there's ESUs missing, and also there's problems with during upgrades about objects that are obsoleted and so forth. Now, you need an AIS server for your UX1 and Orchestrator. I mentioned earlier there's a change assistant, and 9.2 update 2 is available. Something else that I just learned recently, like in the last few days, I wanted to mention for 9.2 upgrades is that the way that user grids, and I don't have a slide on this, I apologize. The grids in older releases had you had the ability to assign a grid to a group, like a role-based grid, I guess you would call it. Now in the 9.2 upgrade, anything that's not assigned specifically to a person or to public gets converted to a public grid. So if you have 50 grids assigned to the accounts payable department and accounts receivable, and they all have their own grid in one application, and they were assigned to their role. In the 9.2 upgrade, all of those grids will be available for everyone because there's no such thing as role-based grids anymore. You have to use security to secure grids by role instead of assigning them to a role. So if you do a 9.2 upgrade and you go into your application and you see in your grid drop-down box that there's like 27 grids, that's probably why. They've all been converted to public grids. And finally, I don't know how many people know this, but no, JD Edwards is not going to an Android platform, but it is 64-bit now. Finally, after all these years, decades, I would say, JD Edwards is now 64-bit and can leverage the amazingly advanced, decades-old technology of 64-bit processors. And with that, Brooke, I am done, and I'm going to hand this back over to you.
Great, thank you so much.
There you go.
Awesome, thank you. Let me know. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. I see it.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Bill. I would just want to cover a few follow-up items, and then we'll move on to our question and answer section of our webcast. So our webcast today is part of GSI's free ongoing educational webcast series on JD Edwards, and our upcoming webcasts are currently listed on the screen. And to view our most up-to-date schedule, you can go to getgsi.com/webcasts. We also provide extensive free educational resources for the JD Edwards community, including our educational webcasts, our monthly newsletter called the GSI Insider, our online resource center where you can access our on-demand webcasts, white papers, etc. And we also have on-site and virtual workshops. And if you'd like to sign up for our weekly email reminders for upcoming webcasts, our monthly newsletter, or to create an account, go to getgsi.com, and you can go to platforms on the main menu and then select the correct platform that you're looking for. All right, I see that we have a couple of questions. I just want to remind everybody that if you would still like to submit a question, you can do so using the questions panel on the GoToWebinar console window located on the right side of your screen. And if you minimized your console earlier, please click the left-facing arrow to redisplay the questions panel. Okay, Bill, let's get into the questions. So our first question is from Ted, and Ted says, question on storing print queue files in the database. Is this supported for both UBE and BIP report types?
Okay, sorry about that. I was a little muted.
Okay.
Yes, anything that produces a file output will be stored in the database.
Okay. All right, and the next question is from Stacy, and Stacy says, the 64-bit starts specifically with the tools 9.2.2.6 release?
I don't know if I'm allowed to answer questions from Stacy. I'm just kidding. No, it's 9.2.
Okay.
Anything 9.2 and above, so it's not not just 9.2.2.
Okay. All right, perfect. And it looks like our last question we have is from Brian, and he said, oh, we have a few more questions, sorry. Brian asks, have you heard when TR 9.2.3 will be released?
I have not, but let me take a look here real quick and see if I have that information.
Okay.
So we just got 9.2.2.6 released, and I'm looking at the release dates. 9.2.3.0 is targeted for Q4, so I guess any time now. But I have not heard anything other than to see that they say they think they're going to release it in this quarter. Since I haven't heard anything, I don't know, maybe I'm going to be at Open World next week, so maybe they'll mention it there.
Okay, great. And Ted asks, OLE attachments are no longer supported in the latest tools release. What happens to these attachments when upgrading from older releases?
Wow, good question. No one's asked me that, so let me see if I can get that information quickly for you.
And if we can't, Ted, that's something that we could always
Yeah.
follow up with you on too.
So yeah, I don't have that answer off the top of my head, and I'll find that for you and get it to you.
Okay, great. Perfect. All right. Well, that appears to be the end of our questions today. Thank you so much, everybody, for all your questions, and thank you, Bill, so much for your presentation and answering questions today. And as a follow-up from today's webcast, we ask that you complete a short 1-minute survey when you exit, and you will be receiving an email with a link to our Resource Center on our website where you can access the recording from today's webcast, as well as a copy of the presentation. And after today's webcast, we will do the drawing for the $25 Amazon gift card, and anybody that attended the entire webcast will be eligible to win, and we will notify the winner. And if you have any follow-up questions, you can contact Bill or myself, and we will get back to you. Our contact info is currently on the screen. Thank you again so much for attending our presentation today, and we hope that you have a great day.